Welcome to another video. In today's episode we're going to compare the Nikon 50mm S 1.8 lens with the Voigtlander F2 Apo lens and see what differences there are between the two lenses. Now, in case you didn't know, I'm sure most of you are aware, the Voigtlander is a manual focus lens. The Nikon is an autofocus lens. The 50mm S lens was one of the first lenses, maybe even the first, I don't know, but one of the first lenses that Nikon came out with for the mirrorless system. It's a very good to excellent lens. The Voigtlander, as far as quality-wise, manufacturing, you'd be hard-pressed to find a Voigtlander lens that isn't manufactured very well, and this one is no exception. The focus ring on it is silky smooth. The overall just quality of the lens, you can just pick it up and feel the quality in it. The one thing that is different with the Voigtlander, so that you know in case you are interested in it, is that you have to set the aperture with the aperture ring on the lens itself. You can't set it in your camera. You have to set it on the lens, which is fine, but just know that in advance. So I'm not necessarily here to give you some professional charted, this lens is this and this lens is that. No, it's more here, let's take a few photos. Let's check the sharpness in the middle and the corners. Let's check the color differences if there are any. Let's see if there's any differences in the bokeh. I will say that I did take a couple images yesterday with the Voigtlander of people. And man, I'll tell you, that thing nailed the skin tones. It really nailed it right on. I mean, I didn't have to make any adjustment whatsoever in post-processing. I don't think I touched the texture, the clarity, the colors, nothing. I just left it as it was. So, I already know going in, it's a excellent quality lens. But let's find a composition. It's been raining the last couple days. It's been a little dreary. Got an overcast, kind of muddy sky. But let's see what we can find and go from there. See you soon. Okay, I'm back in my office. Here are the first images. The image on the left is the Voigtlander lens, and the image on the right is the Nikon. These are both straight out of camera. I didn't touch a thing other than load them in the Photoshop. As you can see, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difference between the two color-wise. If you look over here, maybe a little bit more blue. Of course, the clouds were changing. The light kept changing because of the nature of the day. The rain had just ended, so I can see, you can see the little bit more blue sky here than here. I did shoot these within probably a minute of each other, so I tried to get them as close as possible. But I believe that this cloud section is similar to this one. You can see a little bit more blue in there. To 100%, I had focused right about here on this tree. And you look here, now these are at F2 ISO 100. It was a slightly faster shutter speed, I believe, for the Nikon lens. You would think, I know it's probably hard to see on a smaller screen, that maybe the Nikon is even a little bit sharper. I did have it on a tripod. Maybe I missed the focus a hair with the Voigtlander lens, because if you look here, you can see the tree might be a little bit more in focus. So I may have missed. I don't think so, though. I was pretty much had this going. It was really the first time out using the Voigtlander other than a few minutes yesterday. I took a couple shots with it yesterday, but this is the first time I was really out with it, so I'm still kind of learning the lens as to adjusting the focus points to my camera. So it's possible I miss focus every once in a while. But you can see when you go back further with the Voigtlander, look back here where you can clearly see it says speed bump. I'll even go to 200% and you can see it says speed bump. With the Nikon at 200%, look over here. It's not quite as obvious to read. You can read it. Again, the Nikon lens, it's a very good lens in its own right. I'm not trying to downgrade the lens. I'm just trying to show you a little bit of the differences between the two. I think you're getting a little bit more resolution, a little bit more depth with the Voigtlander. Here we are at f/5.6 with both lenses again, Voigtlander on the left, Nikon on the right. Let's zoom in at 100% at 5.6. Nikon certainly holding its own. I think you do get, obviously looking here, a little bit more range with the Voigtlander. Colors are maybe a little bit more accurate. Let's go down along this fence and in these weeds. Let's look along here and see the textures in this fence line compared to the Nikon at 100%. It's very close. I think the Voigtlander's slightly better, but I mean, it's, you're picking hairs. It's pretty close. And at 5.6, of course, you're not going to get everything completely in focus, but I think you get a little bit better with the Voigtlander. Now, this is the first time I'm looking at these images along with you, so I purposely did that so I wouldn't have a bias as to which one I thought was better. Let's go in at 100% again, and again looking here as opposed to here. It's a little bit brighter here, not by much. Let's look down at these along here. Very similar. I think the range, however you want to say it, in the colors, it's a little bit brighter here with the Voigtlander lens, if you want to look there. And let's come down more in the foreground. F8, we should have a little bit more in focus. And with the Voigtlander, I think we do. These are both at 100%. Now, this was on the tripod. It's pretty close. I think you're getting a little bit more slightly more clarity with the Voigtlander. It's pretty close though. All right, the next image is this leaf I found. There's some sea grape trees around here that when these leaves fall off, they produce some just amazing colors. So I happened to find one, and I thought I would try that one at f2, f4, 5, 6, 8, and 16 with both lenses and see what we come up with. Here's the next image. This was of that leaf that had been sitting on the ground. Let's go in at, this is the Voigtlander again on the left. There's 100%. I think in this one, it's pretty obvious the Voigtlander is a much sharper lens, at least when it comes to this image. And remember, this on the right was with autofocus, and this one was not, and I did not put these on the tripod. This was actually handheld. So you can see in particular, like look down in here. Now, the light was changing, so maybe when we get to F5.6 it'll be a little bit different. I think there was some light hitting the leaf, but still I mean, the clarity between these two is pretty obvious between the Voigtlander and the Nikon, at least when it comes to this. Let's try F5.6 and see what we get. Okay, again, Voigtlander on the left, Nikon on the right. Color-wise, it's a lot closer than I thought it would be. I thought that the Voigtlander would have far more saturated colors, but the Nikon really holds its own when it comes to that. Let's go in at 100% again. This is at F5.6. Now, I may not have been at the exact. Now, all of a sudden, look how much sharper that is at 5.6. And maybe it's because the light wasn't quite hitting it the same. But at 5.6, with the autofocus versus the manual focus, now we're a lot closer. In fact, the Nikon might even have the edge, just because of my focusing, maybe. But yeah, it's a far different at 5.6. I may have missed the focus a little bit. Gotta love autofocus, but at 5.6 it's a completely different lens. All right, we're going to do a quick test of this sign with a lot of lettering on it and see how they compare, see if the Nikon has any fringing on it or not. Now, the one thing I do want to mention is, even though the Nikon is a 1.8 lens, I shot everything at f2 to start, rather than 1.8. Let's compare apples to apples. I realize it's slightly different just because it's not completely wide open, but it's close enough, so that's what I'm doing. All right, I wanted to try something with some words, some letters on it. And again, Voigtlander on the left at f2, the Nikon on the right at f2. And for my money, the Voigtlander's better. It's not miles better, but I think it's a little better. I also want you to look at the color gradation. Look at the smoothness here at f2 behind the sign versus this. Look it up here. Look it up here. I think this here, for my money, at f2, the separation between them, for me, the Voigtlander's much better. For whatever reason on this image, to me it's better. Let's move into 100% here. And at 100%, Nikon's better. I wasn't on a tripod, but it was saying that I hit the focusing. Let's move up. But you can see, look here, look right here and see this, and then look over here and see this. I think you get a wider range again of colors. You get a brighter image. Looks like probably what happened was my focus point was probably shifted a little bit higher when I took the Voigtlander shot, because you can see as you get up higher, it's a lot more in focus at f2. And to me, this is a big difference. Like in here, look at this versus this. Let's move down again a little bit. Let's look at the lettering on the screw. That says, I believe, T4 or 14. You kind of read it there too, 2024. That's a little bit harder to read. So I think the sharpness is a little better, and I think the overall color there is better on the Voigtlander at f2. At f8, I still like the coloring better on the Voigtlander. I like the bokeh better. Let's go in to 100%. And even on f8, you start to see the texture in the B and the E, but it's very present with the Voigtlander. So you do get more sharpness. 202414, 20214. But even still, look at the texture in that screw versus this over here. Maybe it's a little bit harder to see on your screen, but on mine it's pretty apparent that this is better. This is still very good though. You know, I'm not trying to be critical of the Nikon lens, man. I mean, this is a very good lens, but this Voigtlander is just built a little different. This image was shot at 207 millimeters f6 with a Tamron 70-300, ISO 400. And the skin tone's pretty good. And you start going in at 100%. And that's what you get. Okay? Pretty darn good. So sometimes you might want a little softer when it comes to a portrait. That'll be your decision. I prefer the 85. To me, the Nikon 1.8 is a wonderful portrait lens. It's what I use mostly. However, I was out shooting some sports and this image just happened to be right in front of me and it was hard to pass. As opposed to, this was shot at 50 millimeter. Now this is already up at 100% at 5.6 with the Voigtlander. Look at the skin tones. To me, the skin tones are better. But the issue is you're going to get every little thing in here. It's going to show everything. So, you know, is it a good portrait lens? Depends. You know, if what it is you're trying to accomplish. It's going to be a very good landscape lens. To me, it's going to be a very good walk around street lens, a travel lens. To me, I think that's who it's for. The Nikon the same way. I mean, you really can't go wrong with either lens. It's just a matter of how much, if you want that extra resolution, and I think if you get your focus right now, it depends on autofocus, manual focus. As you can see, I probably missed, 10 tacked on sharpness, even though I had the little dancing ants there to try and get me in focus. You can still be a hair off. With the Nikon, you're going to nail it. You put your pinpoint focus point on there, you're going to nail it. So, it really depends on what you want. I can't decide for you which one you should pick, but I just want to show you a few different things. To me, the Voigtlander is a better lens. Not by a lot, by a hair. I think overall it's the better lens. Is it worth giving up the autofocus for? That'll be what you have to decide. All right, so please like and subscribe. I'm going to take both lenses back out again and shoot infrared with it and see how much of a difference there is. I'm also going to do one for black and white, because one of the reasons why I wanted to try this Voigtlander was because of the micro contrast. I think it has a better micro contrast than what the Nikon is going to have, I believe, for black and whites. Again, even though I've gotten some really good black and whites with that Nikon lens, I'm hoping to get a little bit more of a range with my grayscales with the Voigtlander, but we'll find out. All right, till next time, take care of yourself, and thanks for watching.